We're imagining those things on the minds of the president, considering the state of insecurity in Nigeria and some of the dimension of the security situation in the country. Boko Haram has been there before he came into office. Kidnapping is on the rise. Banditry, cultism, cattle rustling has become a major phenomenon the president says he is dealing with. That's our focus tonight as we set agenda for this new government. Everyone, wherever you may be watching, hashtag what Buhari must do, hashtag second term agenda. What are those things you think are priorities for this government to focus on? Tonight, we are looking at security, and which is perhaps the most important thing in our polity. If there's no security, you can't even talk about economy. If there's no security, you can't talk about lifestyle or health. Security is very important, and that's why it gets our attention. And we're talking to President Muhammadu Buhari, if he's watching right now. You are Nigerians, and your voices have been heard tonight on the program. Some of your tweets I will read in the course of the program. Let me introduce you to some of my guests on the program. Colonel Hassan Stalabo has been talking to us on the program. And we have from our Abuja studio, Professor Usiji Medana is a professor of criminal justice and penology. Thank you so much, Professor, for coming on the program tonight. Let me begin by asking you, you know the internal workings of the APC. The party promised that it's going to tackle some of the major things, security being topmost on that. But it looks like perhaps we're losing it because Colonel Hassan Stalabo did say it looked like we're losing some of this part of the war. What's your take generally?
Shaun, thank you for having me. First and foremost, I'll start by making some kind of factual statements. Let me refer to a publication on the Washington Post of June 15, 2015 about crime demography, that is delinquency generally. It says that 10% of the population commits almost 63% of the crime committed in America. Now let us come back to home and think maybe apply it locally. If we have 5% of the population of Nigeria maybe have crime delinquency, actually we are thinking of almost 5 million or 10 million people with a police of 300,000 people, and I think there is serious thing to do. First, let's go to provide solution, not to just talk about the let's say problems. First and foremost, recruitment to meet the ratio, the United Nations ratio of policing. This government actually started by 10,000, 15,000 and 30,000 recruitment into the Nigerian police. Secondly, they increased the salaries of the police. Thirdly, if we look at it from April, when the situation degenerated to this stage, I think if you look at the arrests made, almost 200 and something bandits were arrested, almost 15,000 rounds of ammunition recovered, then some of the victims rescued. So the whole thing, media too contribute sometimes. In other climates, when there is such crime, they go into psychological warfare against even the criminals. That is, if you look at what happened in Switzerland, they talk and condemn the criminals more than the security apparatus. You now make them to be weak too. But in our country, it's unfortunate. Some section of the media talk almost about the crime. They don't even do a follow-up of the people arrested to get some words from them, so that those people committing the crime will be scared. They will know they will get caught. So this psychological issue to contribute. When we go to intelligence gathering, we must do much in that, because security is who you know, not what you know. The more information you have on individual, the more accurate you predict his action, the more accurate you protect the society against the evil of such individual. So we must do more on intelligence gathering. And you know, if you want to do intelligence gathering, you must incentivize it. There must be an incentive. We must do that. If you look at it in your prelude, I have seen where you talk about the issue of cattle rustling. Most of these bandits arrested, if you look at them, they are from one extraction of a particular set of people. And there is history of this cattle rustling. I look at an article where almost 2,000 of the cattle slaughtered in Lagos are from cattle rustling. What do we do? How do we tackle this issue? I think the government should wake up in this aspect, maybe to incentivize issues. We will see some Fulani young people selling mango in Abuja, selling all sorts of things. If you do a kind of this thing, a program where these gentlemen, you can give them loan, maybe of 2 million naira, they will be able to have like 50 calves. Then we'll do what is happening in East Africa, where we can put in cheap in these cattle. Their movement is known, everything is known. Let me come back to the weaponry and other things that the Fulani in West Africa, Central Africa, and East Africa, they have picked weapons. Research shows that those in East Africa is because of issues of wild animals confronting the cattle. Then in Central Africa and West Africa is because of cattle rustling. So what do we do? A Fulani man in the bush cannot put a distress court. Definitely there must be some kind of sort of defense that he will confront those criminals. So what do? We can track this thing, put GPS on their weapons and everything. So it's something I don't think we even have time to talk on all these issues on this video.
Because we are setting agenda for President Buhari, I want to show you this. Perhaps because you're a professor and this is your area, you might be able to, if we show you some of the list, the slide that we had earlier, where the IG listed some of the issues on the table. And it does show that the northern region of the country has some of the most distressing data on some of these criminality and death rate. 767 of the persons killed are from the northern region of the country. In banditry, Zamfara, Katsina, and Sokoto State has the highest figure. In kidnapping, Zamfara has the highest figure. By highest records by states breakdown in terms of the deaths. The states in some part of the north has the highest figure. What is happening in the northern region? Is it something that should give us a concern that the government needs to look more into details into some of these issues?
Just now, Sheuna, I told you, I gave you statistics from April when the operation ADA started, where 200 and something were arrested. I told you the statistic, probably maybe a kind of statistic of people with delinquency. If you look at our prison today, you see we have more prisoners than those in people in our prisons than in the US. So if you look at it very well, if you have almost 10 million people that can commit crime, in a situation where you have 300,000 or 1 million people, let's put with other security agencies, what do you think? Actually, you might not be seeing the effort of the security agencies. Now, what we should do, the colonel was talking about even a fund. Recently, there was this Police Trust Fund Act that has been passed by the National Assembly. All what he said in that this thing that we need to get some money from source, that is the corporate organization, and some of the levy that we can do on security. That very bill has addressed that. Issue of funding, if we now compare our police funding with that of South Africa, you see, and you look at our population, South Africa was 60-something or 70 million people, but the funding, security funding, is higher than what we have. If you look at it, from 1999 to date, the funding of security actually is very meager, very minimal. So it's only now that the government is trying to see how they can look inward, they can look to see how they can fund whatever to augment what has been given to the security agency.
Thank you, Professor. Because we're out of time, we have to go now. Yeah. Thank you so much, Professor Usiji Medana, Professor of Criminal Justice and Penology. Just in a sentence, what do you think is urgent that the president must tackle now?
He should begin to address our economic fundamentals to see how we could come up with solutions. And I'm referring to here looking at agric, see how it can generate employment, the mining sector, see how I can generate employment. The entertainment sector, see how I can generate employment.
I must sincerely thank you, especially that you're talking about these issues and the way forward. Thank you so much, Colonel Hassan Sanlabo, for coming on tonight. And also, Professor Osuje Medana, always breaking it down with facts and figure. Thank you so much for coming on tonight. That's our show for tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Sean Kimbale. Bye-bye.